Hello! I think we're live. Yes! Hooray! Hello! I've missed you. Welcome to Bounce English free IELTS lesson here on Facebook Live. I am so excited to be here. My name is Melanie. I am one of the co-founders of Bounce English, and I love helping students improve their writing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about writing for IELTS Task 2. So thank you so much for joining me. Let me get ready to share my screen with you all. How fun. Okay, get ready for some spoilers, but only for a minute. Don't look. No. You want to look at that. Yes, how to do IELTS Task 2 writing by Melanie Johnson from Bounce English. So I am happy to be here, and I am happy to be teaching you a little bit about the mysteries of IELTS writing task 2. It's no mystery, really. Once you know how to do it, you know how to do it, and it's great. So let's get into it. In the next half hour, I think it's going to be about 15-20 minutes, you are going to learn a little bit about the IELTS writing test. If you don't already know about it, could be a review for some of you. You will learn what to expect on IELTS Task 2, and we will look at some tips on how to organize your IELTS Task 2 writing. Sound good? Yay! Let's get started. So, first, just a review as to how the IELTS writing test is organized. The test is 60 minutes, and there are 2 writing tasks. Task 1 is 20 minutes long, and then task 2, which is going to be our main focus today, is 40 minutes. So let's look at what those tests are. First of all, it depends on what IELTS test you're taking. There is a general training IELTS test, and there's also an academic writing test. So that kind of depends. If you're doing general training is usually aimed for students who need IELTS as proof for more general purposes. Surprise, surprise. So if you're immigrating or if you're immigrating to a specific country, if you need proof of language for a job, these are reasons why you might take IELTS tests or general training. And so if you do IELTS general training, task 1 is to write a letter of some kind. And task 2, so some typical topics that you might do for IELTS general training are writing to a business and asking them some questions, or a really common one is travel, like you lost a suitcase and you need to find out what happened to it, or maybe you are writing a letter to a newspaper about something in your town. These are all really typical IELTS task 1 questions for general training. So this might be an example of one. You borrowed something from a friend, it's been damaged, write a letter. We won't spend too much time on this today. Then there is academic training. Academic training is aimed for people who need to or show their language ability for academic purposes. So frequently, if you're going to university, you might need to take IELTS and show you have a specific score for the IELTS exam. Or if you want to be in a specific program at a university, you might need to demonstrate that. Even if you're taking IELTS in a country, in your country, you might need to show a specific IELTS level to do some courses. These are all, they tend to be reasons people take IELTS academic. And so for IELTS academic, what you do for task 1 is you describe some sort of visual data, which I'll show you an example of. And then you might have a graph, a timeline, a process, a map. These are all possibilities. Don't know what those things are? Well, guess what? I have some examples. So these are some really typical kinds of visual data you might get. on IELTS Task 1 for academic, and then you're going to have to describe. So for example, if you got the graphs in the middle, you'd have to describe what's happening with them. If you got the maps on the right, you would have to describe the changes. If you got the process on the left, you'd have to describe what happened in each step. So that's pretty typical for Task 1. But Task 2 is the same, although you do get a different question depending on if you are taking general training or academic. But the task itself is the same whether you're taking general training or academic, and that is to write an essay based on your opinion. Okay, Task 2 has some different essay types you might be asked to write. So you might be asked to write about advantages and disadvantages. You might be asked to write about cause and effect. You might be asked to write about problem solution, or you might be asked to write about whether you agree or disagree. And this task is what we are going to spend most of our time today discussing. So we're going to look at this example. This example is going to be our working space. So if you're following along at home, get out a piece of paper and a pen to take notes if you want. But take a moment to read this. Okay, what do you have to do to answer this question? Well, I'm going to take you step by step and show you how to answer this question. You want to know something? This will work anytime you get an essay question that you have to write a timed answer with for IELTS. So this will work for IELTS Task 2 every single time. So first, we have this question. Okay, I want you to take a look at this question. We're going to take this question as our example, and we're going to go through the steps on how to answer it. All right, so the first thing you want to do is make sure you understand the question. Believe it or not, a lot of students skip this step because they just get so nervous. They're like, oh my God, I have all this, I've got to start writing, you know, and I get it because it's obviously, there's a lot of pressure when you're doing the IELTS exam, but you need to take some time to make sure that you have understood the question. So in this case, our question is, in the past, when students did a university degree, they tended to study in their own country. Nowadays, they have more opportunity to study abroad. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this development? So what does this question mean? Well, actually, all it means, you know, and I find this really helpful, just when you get that question, write somewhere on the booklet to answer this question, and then make it more simple for yourself. So in this case, to answer this question, write about the good points and the bad points of studying abroad. That's all you need to do. Okay, so that's step one. Now, you might be thinking, Mel, I don't need to do this. I have a short amount of time. I just need to get writing. I'm just going to say that you will probably do better if you take a moment to do this, because so often students just start writing and they haven't understood the question, and then they don't get as high of a score as they could. So just take that. It only takes like a minute or two, really, once you get used to it. Now we can do step two. Step two is to brainstorm ideas, okay? What you want to do is you want to try and think of as many ideas as you can think of related to the question. So if I were faced with this question about the advantages and disadvantages of studying abroad, I would take a few minutes to just write down everything I could think of that was good and bad about studying abroad. It doesn't matter if you are writing it and you think, oh, this is actually a terrible idea, or this is silly. It doesn't matter. The aim of this part of the process is to grow your ideas. You will have a chance to select ideas next, but for this step, don't let yourself Don't stop yourself. Just try and think of as many ideas as you can. You know, you only need like 3 or 4 minutes for this. Maybe not even that. Sometimes 2 and 3 is enough, but make sure you do this test or this part, because the more ideas you have, the easier it's going to be to organize your answer and answer the question. And that moves us on to step 3, which is write a little plan. So what you want to do is you want to look back at the ideas you came up with in the brainstorming stage. And then take the ideas that you think are appropriate for answering the question. And now you're going to use them to sort of plan out your answer. And then any idea that you think, actually, I don't think I can develop this, or it's not really related, just reject it. You don't need to do anything with it. Then I would take a few minutes to just write out a brief plan. You can think about how you're going to have your introduction, what topic sentences you might have in your main body. Remember, for an IELTS Task 2 question or answer, you should have at least 4 paragraphs. You can have more, but you should definitely have 4. An introduction, then 2 paragraphs in the main body, and then finally a concluding paragraph. So think about how you might organize that and what your topic sentences might be. And then you use what you brainstormed to fill that in. And then what you want to do is write brief, specific notes. Now, I know some of you are thinking, understand the question, brainstorming, organizing. I don't have time for that. I only have 40 minutes. I have to do this. Look, this only takes like 3 to 5 minutes once you get used to it. Okay, so it might take a little bit longer as you practice, but if you practice before your exam, you should be able to do step 1, step 2, step 3 in 3 to 5 minutes. That's it. Then once you've done those things, now it's time to write, okay? And you really should take a few minutes to understand, to brainstorm and plan before writing. I know it feels like you're wasting time, but actually, if you do those steps, you will save time. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever started writing an answer to something, and then in the middle of writing your essay answer, run out of ideas? Yes, because you didn't plan, okay? So by doing a few minutes of planning, that's not going to happen to you, because when you get stuck, you can look right down at your plan and say, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about that, okay? So it's actually step 4 is when you start writing. And then once you finish writing, now you're going to check your work, okay? Before you turn it in, you're definitely going to check your work. So here's what you want to check for. Number 1, did you answer the question? Read through your work and ask yourself, have I answered the question? If the answer is yes, great. If not, you might need to make some changes really quickly. Does your work have a clear introduction and conclusion? Are your ideas organized into paragraphs? This is so important. Make sure that your work is organized and there's a clear introduction, main body paragraphs, and conclusion. Is your vocabulary appropriate for the task? And is it accurate? Are you using the correct form? Is this the right word for this specific area? Do you need an adverb, but you're using an adjective? These are things to look for. And that's related to the last one. Is your grammar appropriate for the task and accurate? So is past tense right? Should you be using passive in one? Well, probably not passive for task 2, but should you be using a modal? Are you using it correctly? Just look for those things. And then finally, of course, you're going to look for any spelling, punctuation errors. Are things capitalized? Those little things that will make a difference to your score. If you do this, it is definitely possible to raise your writing score on task 2 by a half point, a whole point. You can do it. So in conclusion, remember just a few final tips. Watch your timing. Okay, timing is really important. Take time to understand the question and brainstorm. Take time to plan your answer by organizing. Make sure you use appropriate grammar and vocabulary, and proofread and edit your work. And that, haha, so nice I said it twice. That, my friends, is that. I hope that you learned some good stuff for IELTS Writing Task 2. Please do feel free to visit us at bounceenglish.rocks. And don't forget, 2 weeks from this Saturday on June 6th, Bounce English will be running a teach-a-thon, which will be a day of talks for students and teachers. And the aim is to raise money for food banks. So we hope to see you there. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Stay safe. We'll see you next Wednesday for another lesson. Bye-bye.